What's up, everyone? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick.
Miller.
And we're coming to you live from, well, not live, you won't see this when it happens, but we're coming to you from Miller's Dungeon of Metal, Doom and Death and Doom.
Yeah, live. In front of nobody.
In front of no one except for this little machine with the blinky lights. Mm-hmm. But we're back with an album review. And we had another one that came out on the 10th of September that I definitely wanted to go over because it's creepy, ugly, blackened death metal, and I like that kind of thing. So we're going to go over the newest one from Lvcifyre. That is Lvcifyre with a V in place of the U, so you know they're serious. The Broken Seal. This, again, comes out on the 10th of September on Dark Descent Records. It's been formed in 2007 in the UK. This is their third full-length, and this one actually features Menthor from such bands as Nightbringer and Enthroned on drums. And, well, as I pretty much already said, this is very creepy, disturbing, very atmospheric blackened death metal, but it's very riffy, and almost right away, it reminded us of a mutual favorite band.
Yeah, absolutely.
In terms of riffage, Morbid Angel. And yeah, that's kind of how I knew. I was like, all right, I'm probably going to end up liking this. After you get past a really interesting atmospheric intro with gurgles and just all sorts of horrible noises. I think it's like Satan's sleep apnea. You get into waves of very like Pete Sandoval drumming, like the blast beats, the giant floor tom hits. That thing's a war drum. It's not a traditional floor tom. It's just so damn loud.
And he uses it a lot, especially in the first track. But like you said, very Morbid Angel, very Hate Eternal. And the one thing that I'm going to bring up quite a few times about this is the fact that they use their guitars well. They use it to fill out the sounds. They don't use a lot of like samples and keys and stuff. They do all that with the guitars. And props to you guys for doing that, because we don't hear it too much. You guys do it very well.
The production on here is really good too.
Yeah,
like
bass tone. Oh, I like that bass tone.
That bass tone snarls. It almost kind of feels doomy, but it feels very organic. It doesn't feel like super compressed. In fact, not much of this feels compressed, because when it comes down to reverb, especially on the vocals, the vocal cadences are strange. They're not necessarily always like very rhythmic, but he sort of just rides the wave of reverb into Creepy Town, because that's exactly where this album lives. It really loves atmosphere, but they create it musically. There are some samples on it, but that cool mix of like just pummeling death metal chugs and then dissonant, ugly, squealy atmosphere. It really makes for an interesting mix, especially when you throw in all those crazy vocals on top of it.
When we did the review of the Aborted, I mentioned that I don't like these type of vocals, and in this case is one of those cases where I just don't care for it too much. It's just gargly, snarly stuff, and I get it. It's more of an atmosphere thing.
Very cavernous.
Yeah, very cavernous, but there's little in terms of dynamic or flow or anything like that. He rides the wave a little bit, but sometimes it gets too much. Like it fills in like the song Black Beneath the Sun. I thought that there were parts of that got washed out because of the amount of stuff, but I understand that's what they were going for in there. So they wanted that washed out, overwhelming sense in that moment in that song. They do it well, but it's just not my bag.
It's kind of like a mix of, I'd say, like Behemoth's Demigod and then Morbid Angel's Blessed Are the Sick.
It's a great comparison.
Yeah, it's a great comparison because it really kind of works. I mean, it has like the sludgy, dense, slower section, especially on the songs Wolves of the Great Dark and the last track, Black Mass, which both slow it down a little bit, because slow is not necessarily a big speed on here. They love going fast as hell, especially the drum work. Again, it's flying, but you get a lot of like really high speed tremolos. Those two songs slow it down and really labor building the song up from like a bleak atmospheric start. Wolf of the Great Dark actually starts off with possibly a few clean tones on the entire album. But of course it builds into their maelstrom of like chaotic riffs, but I like the slow build and atmosphere, because when it comes to the atmospheric elements, I don't think they're overbearing. They're used quite well to set up songs and keep the flow going between songs.
Yeah, and the Wolves of the Great Dark, I love that song, but in that where that bass break is, where it's just a bass guitar. I wish the guitars would have maybe matched on to what that bass was doing and not felt the need to hit those like tremolo, those like 16, 30-second notes all the time.
Yeah.
But that's also not this band. They're not in that groove-oriented thing. This is a straight death metal album.
Oh, God. I mean, when it comes down to, like, the riffs, the vocal style, I think it really leans heavily on the death metal side. The blackened elements are mostly in the atmosphere and occasionally, like, the dissonant riffs and such. But one moment where they do slow it down, even though the drummer's still flying his great mass, they kind of rock the old-school tritone.
Yeah.
And that's classic Evil. It's like Blackened Sabbath for a minute there. And that has a long intro to it that is, again, just people being tortured in a giant dungeon or a cave. I don't know if they had someone chained up in the studio / cave, but they probably credited him with backup vocals on that. It's like, see that guy that we haven't fed and we've tortured for a week? He gets a credit for one of these songs. Good for you.
He's in the liner notes on the bottom.
If he survives.
If he survives.
Ken did that.
Well, yeah, I like the intro. It's very creepy. It's ominous sounding. It reminded me of like when Super Joint Ritual's setting up for a song. Like their intro brings you back to those old like 70s Lucio Fulci movies, those old horror movies. Just that soundtrack, those sounds, those notes they're hitting. They do a really good job on this song, and this is probably my favorite song on here, and it is the longest one.
But honestly, it's probably mine too.
Yeah, it has one of the best riffs on the album in it, for sure. So after the main solo break, it's one of the parts in the album that actually hit hard, and that's one of the problems I have with the album as a whole is a lot of their big moments in the song don't hit as hard as what I think they should, to me anyway. It's maybe the riff choices, or there's a lot of them they just kind of like slide into a riff. It doesn't really hit you or impact you in any way to make you be like, oh shit, you know, like, because when you're listening to, I'm going to make some aborted comparisons because it's the last thing I did, but on that album, there were moments when we just looked at each other like, damn, man, that is just fucking nasty.
The riffs just slam into you.
Yeah, they hit hard, and none of those particularly do that here. But as these gripes that I love death metal, and this is to the T what death metal is, start to finish. There's no bullshit, there's no fluff. They get to the point, and the blackened aspects, I'm not well versed in the blackened area of things, but I dug this album in the sense of they used those samples and those elements of atmosphere well, and it wasn't overbearing. Nothing really popped out unusually.
They didn't hang on too long, too.
No. They kind of go from thing to thing.
The longest section was probably the last track, but it built, and that was the thing. Like, you can hang out for a little bit as long as you're going somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kind of ramp up the mood. There were a couple songs. Blood of Oz was one of them, and the other song was Tribes of Chem. Those are the ones I think that were a little bit shorter, and I think they were just trying to squeeze as many just brutally insane riffs in. Granted, there were some really good ones, but it was kind of how they structured them. It kind of felt a little disjointed. But when this band is firing on all cylinders, namely one of the tracks that I absolutely love in here, Headless Right, with the weird breakdown fill, I guess, that starts that off.
Yeah.
It's a really creative drum pattern and how they throw that syncopated chug on top of it.
That whole thing is really creative in the sense that they're all kind of doing their own thing, and even it sounds like one of the guitars is in a different time signature, and it just fits really well, and it creates a sense of unpleasant.
Yes.
Dread. It's very, dread, unpleasant, uneasy. You got nerves. And I do like in this song how they fit little nods to that badass riff that comes out of that main riff. In the other riffs, they have little notes here and there that hit those certain segments of that main riff, tying it all back together, and I really like the way they did that on this song. I don't see that too much in the other songs on the album, but in this one I thought that the Headless Right was a well-constructed song in the sense that they wrap everything around, everything works really well together.
It's that whole brutality, but you can still have spots of melody in it. And while these are death metal melodies, so to like people that don't like death metal, this is not going to be pretty at all. But to us, it's like, okay, that's a really cool, clever hook, and how it's worked into the song and they come back to it is also really cool.
Yes.
Overall, I think this is a pretty solid album. And my only exposure to this band was through their last EP, Sacrament, which I thought was really good. Finally hearing a full length from these guys, this is a very impressive piece of work. Not without its flaws, but man, I mean, you hit me in my morbid angel feels, and I mean, yeah, you can kind of win that way. So overall, I'm going to give this 4 stars. This is a really solid album, drenched in atmosphere, but not drenched to the point where it's just too much. It has the right amount of that. The riffs are plentiful on here. They are bleak. They are borderline apocalyptic. This band wants the end of the world, at least, well, after that album goes.
Anyway.
Yeah, like, let them tour on this and then the world can end. But yeah, like sonically, this is just brooding and evil, and it's riffy and high energy as hell. So yeah, if you're like a big blackened death metal buff and you love Morbid Angel, definitely check this out.
I'm going to go with a 3.5 out of 5. It's a solid listen for me. I do have some gripes. I felt the drums sometimes on some of the songs could have filled out the space a little bit more and not been so like syncopated, like staccato type, you know, on the nose. Filled out the sound a little bit. 3.5 out of 5 is a solid rating for me because I'm kind of a dick. And I like this album. I'm definitely going to jam Headless Right and the last song, Black Mass. Those songs made my my playlist for my normal, everyday, mowing the lawn, doing dishes type of playlist.
Get yourself a bottle of Jack Daniels and a Ouija board for that one.
Jack Daniels and a Ouija board.
Well, you're going to have to fight the demon.
That's what I need down here. I need a Ouija board and a bottle of Jack.
You got to stay loose.
Yeah.
You got to stay loose, man. Demons like to shift and move. At least this way, you know, you're going to, like, you know, not leaning into the punches as much.
I don't know, though. This house was owned by a church for like 100 years, so maybe I better not tempt fate with that.
Where's your sense of adventure?
I know, right? All right, and we want to remind you, we have a big old giveaway, so hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications so you can be notified when we hit that big mark, 7,500. Got a whole gaggle of CDs to give away, and we just keep throwing shit in a box, and we're going to send it your way. If you comment on that video, which will be in the description, it'll be on our main channel page. We also have Patreon if you're interested in that. The link will be there. And shirts. Thralls of Metal at gmail.com. Put shirts in the subject line. We'll get that right to you. And what else?
Well, pretty much it's a giant thank you to everyone watching, and we will be back with more reviews and such, and probably do some more down here in Miller's Doomy Death Dungeon of Love.
Oh, yeah.
Catch you guys later.